Being a refugee is much more than a political status. It is the most pervasive kind of cruelty that can be exercised against a human being. You are forcibly robbing this human being of all aspects that would make human life not just tolerable, but meaningful in many ways.
The more immune you are to people's suffering, that's very, very dangerous. It's critical for us to maintain this humanity.
الان 60 روزه با پسرم همینطوری داریم میچرخیم، ولی هیچ کس نیستش که بگه یه راهی رو بخواد به ما نشون بده. کجا برم زندگیمو شروع کنم؟
If children grow up without any hope, without any prospects for the future, without any sense of them being able to make something out of their lives, then they will become very vulnerable to all sorts of exploitation, including radicalization.
ليش انتوا هنا اليوم؟
طشة آخر الفصل
المنفذ الوحيد في غزة، في السجن الكبير غزة، مش في غزة
حصار.
سجن كبير يعني.
The officials came here and told them, look, there's no way you're going to get papers to continue. Either you go voluntarily or we arrest you.
I respect you. I respect the passport and I respect you.
It's going to be a big challenge to recognize that the world is shrinking and people from different religions, different cultures are going to have to learn to live with each other.
Thanks for being here. Congratulations on this remarkable film. Unbelievable achievement. You not only tell what feels like the entire story about what's going on in the world right now in regards to the refugee crisis, you also do it in a visually devastating and beautiful way. I haven't seen a film this beautiful in quite some time. It's really a remarkable achievement. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's start with how this started for you. I mean, you in your own way are a kind of a refugee, right? In some respects, not necessarily like this. Is that what led you to be interested in telling this story?
I grew up in China. Year I was born, which is 1957. My father was exiled for about 20 years. So we have to move away from home to a very remote area. I grew up in similar type of condition. And yeah, that's how I had this emotion or understanding about the situation. Maybe I feel more close to my condition.
How did it start? Did you gather the crew and then go start shooting, or did you first go start exploring the camps? And
it started even before I come to West. I was in China for years. I was in soft detention. So there was one opportunity I can send my team members to Iraq to a refugee camp. So we start from there. Then once I had my passport, can travel, I went to Berlin, and then I went to Lesbos. From there, I met a refugee just come down from the boat. I started shooting with my iPhone, and at that moment, I started to organize a team to cover a film. We traveled about 23 nations, 40 camps, interviewed about 600 people. And at the end, we have 900 hours of footage. So it's really well, it's kind of crazy effort.
Was that was that footage that we see at the beginning of the film where you're sort of helping pull these refugees off the boats? And I don't believe, wasn't in Greece, was it? Where was that at the top of the?
It's in Greece. It's in the island called Lesbos.
Yes, of course. Was that iPhone footage that you're talking about? The early footage?
The early footage, iPhone footage.
So you started shooting this footage. It's unbelievable. And when did you start understanding that you needed to employ a kind of bigger idea visually, this aerial footage, this drone footage, even the way that you capture some of these interviews, it's different than most documentaries shoot. I realize you're a visual artist, so you probably think differently than most documentaries shoot, but there's a wonderful sequence where you have person after person standing in the center of the camera, distant, and you're cutting, and they're not saying anything, and you're just cutting to these different people. A beautiful way to humanize these people. Where did you start? Where did these ideas start coming from to sort of stylize the documentary a little bit?
I'm not a typical filmmaker. I'm a visual artist, and of course, I want the film be different from all those newsfeed, or we have seen this too much of those materials about refugee condition. Some are extremely even violent. Some are very hard to really watch. So we want to have an approach which give some moment. You can really look at those people to see what kind of people they are, and if they have any difference from us, and to give this share this kind of sense of familiarness. Normally we call it humanity or something like that. And so the treatment of the lens, the movement of the lens, and the time we gave in a little bit longer, a few more seconds longer in those shooting really help us to achieve it. And of course we have a lot of other technique involved, such as drones. It's very well served this purpose because we jump to many locations, and it only need a few seconds to really get the total visual understanding about those camps and also people, how they move from one location to another.
It's a real testament to what the artist can do versus what the news or the raw footage can do, because I think we've become desensitized a bit to this footage of the camps and of the violence, and I think what you do is contextualize it in a different way that brings a certain amount of the humanity back with the visuals.
Yeah, I think our visual capacity is so large. It needed to be explored by different language, or we have to try differently to speak even the same sentence. So this is endless possibility there.
What was it like for you on an emotional level, going to these different camps, going to these different countries and seeing all of these fences up, all of these walls? You know, there's a stat that appears at one point in the movie that says, forgive me, I don't have notes here, but it said, you know, at a certain point in the 20th century, there was only like 13 countries or something that had walls up, and now there are over 70, right?
Yes, we try to conclude statistics to grab the situation. Yes, as you said, now have so many fences and walls has been built, and 65 million people has been forced out their home, and each minute there's a lot of people still going on, and this seems getting even more violent. If you talk about what happened in Myanmar, you know, it's just a camp been set up to really can have about 900,000 refugees can settle there.
India, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is amazing. It just happens now, and if you talk about Africa, the environmental problem, the famine, but the population will double in decade, and it's going to have a lot of more refugees.
Yeah, that's a stat that's in the film as well. That is due to the effects of climate change. Within just the next few years, we're going to see millions more refugees coming out in Africa due to drought and famine. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really a global condition, and it need a much stronger conscious, both on the political level, the leadership and global leadership, and people makes decisions, and also takes the public to be aware this is not just a regional crisis, it's a human crisis. So.
And it's one of those things that it does take a global consensus, a global consciousness, but does it feel like right now we're reaching anything like that? It feels, not to be pessimistic, but it feels like we're fragmenting even more globally.
It's true. It's if say the political development, it's really fragmented. You say not to say far as the United States would build a war against migrants from Mexico. Also would push away a lot of people already here for decades, or even born here, to about almost 1 million people to push them out, and have all new policies which would limit to accept those people who need help to a very low number, which is quite backwards in every aspect.
It feels like it's a symptom of the of a system that's kind of breaking apart a little bit as well. A lot of people don't feel comfortable helping others at this point in time, which is a terrible thing.
Yeah, look at our own history. The people in the United States, they all children of immigrants or refugees in some point, and it's so easy for people to forget, and to just say no to newcomers and not to help them. They're in desperate situation.
It's so interesting the way that how myopic the United States can be, because the United States talks about its own immigration problem, refugee problem, but the real story is Europe right now. Most of your film takes place in Europe, because Europe is actually where the majority of this is happening and where the solutions really need to come from. You live in Berlin. Berlin has become your home these days, correct?
Yeah, I've been there for 2 years.
What's it like dealing with the refugee crisis there? It's become a huge political issue with Merkel. And
yes, Berlin accepted over 1 million refugees from 15 and 16, and 2015 and 2016, and I think Merkel still very firmly in the principle is in supporting the idea, but with strong backlash from the right, far right movement, and the new election, the far right gained about 12 or 13% of support. They're totally racist movement, and the kind of advertisement you would think that kind of idea only can happen 40, 50 years ago or 60 years ago,
The far-right movement is so strange, because what is the end goal? What is the end goal there? People are going to need a home, and people are going to be moving. There is going to be human flow. So we can't just lock our countries up. We can't just put walls up. The far-right movement has no solution beyond throwing a wall up. It's not going to stop movement.
Yeah, I think they just use this topic to generate some kind of political gain, but that's very effective. People would not think more than that, and they build walls, and they even sending the refugees back to their home, which is dangerous area, and actually most European nations are really quite negative about the situation.
We have another clip from the film that I want to roll. Let's take a quick look at this this other clip from the movie.
هنوز هیچ پلان نداریم.
شما خبر دارید مرزا بسته است، مرز
نه ما امروز تازه از دهن شما داریم میشنویم. کسی با ما اطلاع نداره خط بسته. ولی گفتن قرار بسته شود. تا 2-3 ماه گفته بسته میشه ولی ما فکر نمی‌کنیم اینقدر زود بسته شه.
بسته شما چیکار بود؟
چجوری برگردیم؟ هیچ کس دوست نداره کشور خود رو ترک کنن. که این سختی رو تحمل کنن به این جواب برسن که آسایش داشته باشن.
Unbelievable. Where did you find that? Where was that family?
This is in Austin, in a park in Grace, and you see this is 3 generations of family stays here for could be months. Nobody would tell them what to do. Basically government would not support anything, except some volunteers are working with those refugees. And I think what happened to those refugees, of course, they now all stay in the so-called camps. And the camp always is very large and very, very little hope. They could stay there for years. And of course, the children would have no education and the adults would have no job. It's really, it becomes some kind of psychological warfare, to really make them difficult so no other people would like to come. So
that essentially, you have moments where you have people, they wait in line for 2 hours a day for just a cup of soup or a little bit of water, right? They're not getting any kind of education, as you said. There's no work, it's aimless. And I think it's interesting, you say a psychological warfare, that they're basically trying to make sure that the refugees who are further back don't think that this is a good place to come to.
Yeah, it's really, many refugees tells me, they said that they'd rather go back. They can die in their nation, but to not to be recognized or to be understood in this very civilized society, which is really painful and is not acceptable.
You were making this film for what, the last three years? How long?
No, a year and a half.
Year and a half. Yeah. So throughout the campaign and into the election in the United States, where refugees were becoming a hot topic, for lack of a better word, what was it like finishing this film as Donald Trump won the election?
The election day, when they counting the ticket, I was just come out from a Mexico border. And I take the plane in the middle of the night. I wake up, I ask the flight attendant what is the result. He said that Trump will become a president. That's the moment I just, at the end of the film, you see when I come from the Mexico border. I think it's a very difficult time, not only for here, but internationally. And we are so lacking of understanding about humanity and human rights, very basic human rights. And this is, it tells many things will go backward. And yes, we can see what happens daily on the news.
You currently have an installation project up across the city, right? Can you tell me about this?
Yes, it's built over the city. It's about 300 locations. The title of the show called Good Fences Make Good Neighbors. It's from a American poet, his poetry, Robert Frost. And it's about talking about border and territory, fence, and about immigration.
What gave you the idea to sort of put it up all across the city like this?
Well, the project take a few years to really to think about and to design or make it happen. And it happened to be this refugee situation also at the same time growing, much bigger.
What do you think, nearing, we hear some of the interview in the trailer that we watched at the beginning of this, but nearing the end of the film, one of the people that you interview says we have to learn not just to live with each other, but we have to learn to share, which I think is a really important thing to consider, especially when we talk about the refugee crisis. How do you think we teach the world, not just about humanity, but about sharing?
I think the idea of sharing probably is a quite important notion, because this is we're at a time so-called globalization. Globalization is about sharing. We take all the advantages from globalization. At the same time, we have a lot of casualties and a lot of regional instability. And so how to bear responsibility in not by just take advantage, but really to have a vision and to understand the humanity as one. We all have to live together and to live together peacefully. And this is really why we make the film.
It feels like there's, as globalization kind of grows and grows and grows and resources become more limited, we're still focused in America at the very least, as a culture, focused on the idea of, well, better me than you, or better you to be in that bad situation than me, rather than let's all be in a good situation together.
Yeah, I think conceptually it's so backward if you still have slogans like American First. It sounds right for election, but it's really, really bad idea. We have to understand we live together, we have to share, and any problem happens anywhere, it hurt everybody in here, and eventually it will come to here if somebody desperately being neglected, or we still build this kind of hatred and all those kind of wrong way to interpret our humanity.
What was the most difficult moment of filming this for you?
The film goes to 23 nations with all kind of background. Some is war zone, some is a very dangerous area, even very close to ISIS, all those kind of extreme conditions. But those I never think is difficult. The difficult time is when you think about their future. Those people left their home, millions of them, and they would have no future. Their children would have no education. Average refugees will stay over 20 years as a refugee. So think about that. And I also think about the powerful nations, the privileged ones, and not really pay attention to what is happening. Those things are really, simply I cannot understand this.
Yeah. Let's get some questions from the audience. Who's a question? Right here.
Hi. Thank you for coming, and you've created a beautiful and innovative film, and you're releasing it in a changing business environment. I'm interested in hearing how Amazon got into the picture as a producer, and when that happened in the process.
The film, when we start making, I never thought it's going to be like this. It's going to be in theaters after October 13th, and also the online maybe next February. But it's the global theatrical release all sold out except China and North Korea, and China, because of my name, even they may like the film, but still they cannot give credit to me. And so everybody would have a chance to look look at it, and I did a screening in Washington D.C., in San Francisco, and Los Angeles. The people are really receiving it with great passion, and you know, and I believe in New York also will be like that. So hopefully more people can spend 2 hours to understanding this very large issue.
It's an amazing 2 hours. I can't say that enough. Like, I see it in the theater. It's visually, it's just an incredible film. And then it's also about something that's so important right now. Next question.
Hi. Perhaps your answer is in the film itself, but if you were to try to, from your experience and observation of making the film, how would you verbally distill a solution to what you've seen to explain how things could improve?
I think this is the issue which is so large and is not, and also complicated, because it's not only happens in the Middle East, but in Asia, in Africa, in almost every corner of the world, and even in Australia. So you can see it takes first public conscious. You know, if we believe this world is really made by human being, you know, it's all the problems or crises are created by human. So then everybody would feel we have a responsibility, you know, for our children's sake or for the future. We have to have a voice, and you know, we have to have our voice to be heard. And we have to tell the politicians, and you know, it's like environmental problem. You know, what can we do to environment? You know, it's gradually people will be self-educated or to understand. You know, this is situation. If we don't act, it will hurt all of us.
Next question.
Hi. You post a lot on Instagram pictures of your adorable son. And I wonder, when you look at him and you think about the future, are you, and the crisis that you're talking about, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm very optimistic about life itself, because it's a miracle. You know, we all have this unique life we may never had a chance to understand. But if we look at our human condition, I think it's a pretty sad situation if we think how we still have all those nuclear bombs. We're still selling big, you know, war machines to profit ourselves. You know, we still benefit from different instability of the other nations. You know, we are so greedy and explore the environmental and system. You know, this is horrifying, and it could easily end up in some condition which cannot really not really reverse. You know, it's really I think it's dangerous moment, because the human being becomes so powerful. At the same time, the you know, globalization and the power have such a mysterious force in every aspect. It's never like the map in the physical condition. You know, they are all connected. You know, China, United States, Russia. Who knows? You know, they all have so much power, and the ordinary people are become not as powerful. You know, so.
Do you feel like while the human has become the most powerful it's ever become, we've also become less humanistic at the same time, less connected to our brothers and sisters and our other humans around us?
I think, yes, human become super powerful, and at the same time have a very little understanding about how humanity and our environment is really can survive with you know, our this kind of power, and so it becomes suicidal in many ways.
Sir, I love the film. Thank you so much for being here. I think you said it's going to be in theaters in New York and Washington, D.C., right? October 13th, you said. And then in February, it'll be coming to Amazon as well?
It's true.
Yeah. Please give a round of applause for Ai Weiwei. Thank you.